Welcome to C language tutorial. In this we will be starting with C basics. So what is C and why do we use it? Back in the days of 1970, Bell Laboratories has developed C language, and one of the reasons why they built it was there were many high level languages like COBOL, Fortran, PLI, but they were too slow for the use of operating system code. So Bell Labs decided to develop a language which will be very high in terms of speed in execution. And BCPL is the language which influenced C. So C is very simpler to learn language and helps you master the languages, because other languages like C++, PHP, Java are based on C. So if you will learn C, then the process of learning C++, PHP and other high level languages will be much easier. So higher lower language has got very high execution speed. So C is known to be as higher lower languages because it is lower in terms of its execution speed, while it's higher because unlike assembly language, which is very difficult and which is very erroneous, so there will be lots of errors while you are writing code in assembly language. Also, C is a standardized language, which means that it can be executed, the code can be executed on multiple microprocessor architectures, which means that there are different families of microprocessors, and a family can have multiple, let's say 20 different microprocessors or processors, and any specific language will support only these one family or members of these family. So assembly language is dependent on microprocessor family, while C is a standardized language and it doesn't depend on microprocessors architecture. We will understand what it means in later videos. So how the execution of any C program works. So first of all, we have an editor in which we type the code. So we need a place to write the code, and that is what editor is. Now the first step is obviously typing the code, and second is pre-processing. So there are lots of libraries, there are lots of header files. So one header file can contain thousands of or hundreds of lines of code which are to be repeated. So you don't need to type it again, you just need to include them on your source code. So let's see how source code looks like, and then we will talk about execution. So this is how any C language code looks like. So we have include, in the first line we can see there is include stdio.h. so it means that copy or include the code of stdio.h in this code. So since we can see there are about 14 lines in this code, but internally while compilation or while pre-processing, the code from stdio.h, which can be hundreds of lines, will be imported, therefore making the length of this code to, let's say, 114. So these are repetitive codes which are not to be typed again and again by the programmer, which can be done by the preprocessor step. So after the pre-processing step, the source code's length becomes larger because it imported all the codes from the header files which we included in our source code. After that, the C compiler compiles to make a object bytecode file which has extension .obj. Then linker plays a very crucial role, and we will learn about it in the next slide. So linker basically brings in the references code of different functions and compiles it in a single file, and then an executable file is built or formed. So let's learn about it. So object file. So object file per se gives reference to functions. So we have lots of functions like printf, scanf. So these are in standard library, and to bring them from standard library, linker plays a major role, or else object file just simply gives reference to these printf functions which are located inside standard library. So what are the functions of linker? So linker resolves the references, then it links object files with standard library. So a standard library has got multiple functions, so linker links this object file with the standard library functions. It can also link with other object files if required by the program. It copies functions from libraries to your program. So like the preprocessor copies the code from header files, likewise linker copies the functions from library to your program. So basically the length of the program eventually increases because we are getting data from header files, then we are getting data from functions, and by data we mean that C code. Also many times on library depends on other library, so linker does it recursively. So what does it mean? So let's say there is a function which depends on other function. So it will take the function number 1 and then function number 2. So the source code of function number 1 and 2 will be imported in the single file, and then eventually an executable binary file is formed, which we execute, which we run. So we have seen this sample code. What it does is it prints out the name. So what it does is it asks you what's your name, then you enter it, and then there is a loop which runs 5 times, and we will learn in next slide. So this is for familiarization purpose, to understand how any C program can look like. So what are comments? So comments are to make understanding of the code easier, which helps a new person to understand your code, like what you have written and what you intended the programmer to do. So there are two types of comment. First is double slash in the third line, where we can see there are 2 slashes. This is type number 1 of comment syntax, single line comment style. So this only works for single line. So if you want the comment to be in multiple lines, then you will be using the comment style in fourth, which is slash and then an asterisk and then the comment and then asterisk and slash, which closes the comment. So it can then spread to multiple lines. So it's like writing some kind of annotation to understand what you have written, or what does the program exactly do. So this makes learning easier. And when there are projects which involves lots of programmers, then when a programmer 1 is typing something, then programmer 2 won't be having any idea of what he has written, or he will be spending lots of time to understand it. Comments helps the programmer who are not aware of the code to understand it and then further work upon it. So maybe they can modify the code, or maybe they can add new lines in the code. Then what is header file? So header file contains hundreds of lines which can be imported and does very specific tasks and provides function and functionalities, and eventually saves time because you don't need to type again and again. So programmers who have developed C, they have built the library which contains hundreds of header files, and thus you don't have to repeat the task again and again. You don't have to type it again and again. In the third line, we can see we have a main function, which is the most important function. Contents inside it will eventually get executed. So this is very important. So every C program will contain main function. Now in line 5 we can see we are defining a variable. So by it we mean that, so first of all we can see int, which means that the variable will be of integer type and it will store integers. Integers means any number. So let's say 0, 1, 2, 3, they are integers. And here we are defining it by typing int, then the variable's name, and we are also assigning a value to it. So which means that 0 will be stored inside CTR, which is an integer type variable, and variables value can be increased or decreased or can be changed. Then in line 6 we can see we are defining an array named fname with a space of 15, so it can hold 15 characters inside it. Here we are just getting familiarization of the code, and we will get into the depth in later videos. In line number 7 we can see there is printf function, which says what is your name. So it basically prints out this statement on the screen while execution process. Scanf, it takes the value from the user through the console, which is the place where the program will get executed, and it will be stored inside fname, which in line number 6 we can see has value maximum 15, so it can store up to 15 characters. So if your name is of, let's say, 21 characters, then it won't save it inside fname. It will show some error. Now there is a loop which says while CTR is less than 5, which means that the loop will run till the value is less than 5 of CTR. So in every pass it will print the name which we have typed, then the counter, the value of CTR will increase by 1, and in line 12 we can see there is a bell, so it will ring a bell of the terminal and then it will go back. So there is a slight mistake in line number 12. There must be a curly bracket which will eventually close the while loop, and while loop will repeat till the value is less than 5, so 4. So in line number 11 we can see value of CTR is increased by 1 every time loop completes one pass. Also in line number 2 we can see the terminal sound is heard, and 14, the programmer is closed by curly bracket. So now let's see how the program will execute the code. So first step is to open the editor. So we can see the code over here. Here we are defining the constant bell, and this is used for ringing a bell of terminal. So here we have a loop, while loop. So by default CTR's value is 0 as we define it over here, and in every pass the value of CTR will be increased by 1. So in first pass the value is 0, so it will print out the name and then it will ring a bell, and then the value of CTR will be increased by 1. So again when it will enter in while, the CTR's value is now 1. Now it will print out the name and then it will ring the bell, and the value of CTR will become 2, and in next pass it will become 3, in next pass it will become 4, and this loop will work till the value of CTR is less than 5. So let's execute it. Just type cc, which is C compiler, and then type the name of the C code. Right? So here we have compiled it. Now we will just read C execution. So just type some name, and as you heard, there were 5 alerts, terminal alerts. So things to care about while typing C language code. So we have to follow syntax of C language very religiously, which means that like English has, or any language has, grammar rules. Likewise, C languages or any computer languages has got syntaxes which are like grammars. And in case you don't follow them, then C will not execute while it will show you some error. So you have to then debug the errors or debug the bugs, which means that there will be errors and you have to correct the code in order to execute it properly. So let's say if the function's name is printf, then you can't type print or prntf, because prntf is not printf, so it will show error. So let's see how it looks like. In the video we can see we are changing printf to prntf, and now we are compiling it by cc. So it is showing some error. Now we are going back again to the editor, and we are correcting it, the name of the function, and we are compiling it again. Now it has compiled because it didn't show any error, and we are just seeing the output, which is 2.5. So follow the syntax of any language, any computer language, very carefully, religiously. Now extra spaces can cause problem. So if let's say when we are including any header file, if there are extra spaces, then it will cause problem. So never do that. Again, it comes under syntaxes. So now in here we are just typing a very basic code. We have added extra spaces between include and the header file name. Main is the main function which we have to include in any case. Here we are typing a printf statement. Now we are going to execute it. So we use cc, which is C compiler. So it didn't show any error because the compilation process is completed, and we are seeing the output, which is demo on the extreme left side. Now we are going back again to the editor, and we are including some mistake, which is like we are adding more spaces between less than sign and the file's name, and we are compiling this again, but this time it shows error because there are extra spaces between stdio and less than sign. Now we are correcting it, and we are saving the file again, and we are executing it, ensuring that the program is executed carefully. So compiled carefully, and now we are just executing it. Also we are making new changes, which is adding spaces between the name of the header file, and again it showed error because this file didn't exist. So thing which you need to be careful about is never add extra spaces. If there is a need, then only add the space. Smaller x is not equal to capital X. So be careful when you are using reserved words like scanf, printf, or you are using any variable. So capitals S then scanf won't be equal to scanf, hence it will show errors, and won't work at all. So let's see how it looks like. Here we have two variables, x equal to 2 and x equal to 5. X is smaller and capital X has value 5. So it basically prints out value of smaller x and the capital X, and they are two different ones. Now we are changing the case of printf. Now we have changed it to capital, so it should show some error, and it is showing some error because capital printf is not a valid function in C, while the smaller smaller printf is the correct one. So functions are to be typed in lower caps or else it will show some error. Now we have corrected the case of printf and hence it's showing the correct output without any errors. So interestingly, in this case we typed, or we had two variables. First was lower case x and second was uppercase x, and both of them were holding different value, and after execution and after compilation and execution they showed different output. So let's say when we printed out x, lower x, then it showed 2, and when we ran, or when we printed out the value of capital X, then it showed 5. So x, if typed in different cases, are totally different and are not equal to each other, therefore they can hold various values. So you can't treat them like they are equal, because in C, if there is a difference in case, then they are different. I hope this tutorial would have helped you in understanding C. In the following videos, we will learn in depth about C and what are the major concepts of C. Thank you for watching the video.